Sarah gazed through the kitchen window as she prepared breakfast. The September sun timidly entered through the glass, illuminating the table where the family would soon gather for another meal. 25 years. A quarter of a century beside Michael. The life they had built together was as solid as the foundations of the projects he designed at his engineering firm. The children, Emma and Tyler, already teenagers, barely looked up from their phones during meals. Michael came home late, always involved with some charity project or important meeting. He was respected in the community, a man of integrity who dedicated his free time to noble causes. Sarah was proud of that, but she couldn't deny that something inside her had faded away. It wasn't unhappiness, not exactly. It was more of an absence. Absence of enthusiasm, of surprises, of glances that lasted more than a few seconds. The affection existed, but it was mechanical, predictable as the sunrise. Sarah wondered when was the last time she had felt truly desired, when her heart had raced seeing her husband walk through the door. At 47, she saw herself reflected in the mirror and didn't completely recognize the woman staring back. Where was that young woman full of dreams who had married at 22? She had dissolved into diapers, parent-teacher conferences, Sunday dinners, bills paid on time. Sarah had become the perfect wife, the dedicated mother, but somewhere along the way, she had stopped being herself. Thursday afternoon began like so many others. Sarah met her 3 best friends at the boutique cafe they usually frequented. Jennifer, Rebecca, and Patricia had been her confidants for over a decade. Women who, like her, had built families and seemingly successful lives. The red wine began to flow, and with it, tongues loosened. It was Jennifer who started, with a mischievous smile Sarah had never seen before. "Ladies, I need to confess something," she said, her eyes sparkling. "I have a lover." The silence lasted only a second before Rebecca burst into laughter. "You too? I thought it was just me." Patricia, usually the most reserved of the group, took a generous sip of wine before admitting, "Well, since we're confessing, I have someone too. A younger man. He makes me feel alive again." Sarah was speechless. Her friends, married women, mothers, were there confessing infidelities, as if talking about a new cake recipe. The bewilderment must have been obvious on her face, because Jennifer rushed to explain, "Sarah, honey, after 40, every woman needs a pressure valve. We spend years dedicating ourselves to children, husbands, the house. When do we think about ourselves? These relationships, they don't really mean anything. It's just fun, passion, something that makes us feel like women again. And you know what's more interesting?" added Rebecca, leaning forward conspiratorially. "My marriage has improved. I'm happier, lighter. And that reflects at home. Paul doesn't suspect a thing, and our relationship is better than it's been in years." Patricia agreed with a nod. "It's liberating. It's not about stopping loving our husbands. It's about not losing ourselves completely in them. It's about rediscovering ourselves." The words echoed in Sarah's mind during the entire drive home. Could it be possible? She loved Michael, loved her family, but the feeling of invisibility, of living on autopilot, slowly consumed her. Maybe her friends were right. Maybe this was what was missing. Ryan entered Sarah's life casually. She had decided to resume exercising at the gym, more due to medical recommendation than vanity. He was the personal trainer assigned for her first physical assessment. At 28, Ryan had the kind of looks that drew attention: tall, defined muscles, easy smile, and eyes that seemed genuinely interested in what she said. For the first time in years, Sarah felt observed, noticed, desired. The workouts began to become the highlight of her days. Ryan was attentive, praised her progress, lightly touched her arm when correcting a posture. Sarah began to dress more carefully for the gym, choosing clothes that flattered her, taking extra care with her makeup. It didn't take long for the encounters to extend beyond the gym. A coffee after the workout, a lunch to discuss meal planning, a dinner where they finally crossed the invisible line, separating the professional from the personal. The first kiss happened in the restaurant parking lot. Sarah felt an electric shock run through her body, an intensity she hadn't experienced in years. That night, for the first time in over 2 decades, she was unfaithful to Michael. What followed was a whirlwind of contradictory emotions: guilt, excitement, fear, euphoria. Ryan made her feel young, desirable, alive. The encounters became frequent, and Sarah found herself divided between 2 worlds: the dedicated wife at home, and the passionate woman in her lover's arms, but unlike her friends, Sarah couldn't maintain the lie. The guilt grew, and with it, a strange need for honesty. She convinced herself that if she told the truth, if she was transparent, somehow that would make everything less wrong. It was a Friday night when Sarah decided to tell the truth. The kids were sleeping over at friends' houses, and she and Michael had the house to themselves. He was in the living room, reviewing some projects on his laptop, when she sat beside him. "Michael, we need to talk." The tone of her voice made him immediately close the computer. 25 years of marriage had taught him to recognize when something serious was coming. "I met someone," Sarah began, the words tumbling out. "A younger man. I didn't plan this. It just happened, but I don't want to end our marriage. You're the father of my children. We built a life together. I just need this right now. It's something without feelings, just a phase." Michael stared at her as if she were speaking another language. The silence that followed was deafening. When he finally spoke, his voice came out low, controlled, but with a coldness Sarah had never heard. "You're telling me you want an open relationship? That you want to stay married to me while sleeping with another man? It doesn't work like that, Michael. Many women do this. My friends, your friends," he interrupted, bitterness rising in his tone. "You discussed our marriage with your friends before talking to me, and now you come to tell me you've decided to turn us into what exactly?" "I'm not asking your permission," Sarah responded, surprising herself with her own assertiveness. "I'm being honest with you. I'm telling you because I respect you, because I don't want to lie, but I need this. I need to feel alive again." Michael stood up, running his hands over his face. "I don't accept this, Sarah. This goes against everything we've built, against our principles, our values. How can you think this is acceptable?" "It's just a phase," she insisted. "It will pass. And then we'll go back to normal." "Normal?" Michael let out a humorless laugh. "Nothing will be normal after this." But Sarah was determined. She had tasted a freedom she no longer wanted to give up, and Michael, exhausted and shocked, didn't have the strength that night to continue the discussion. In the weeks that followed, something changed in Michael. He didn't yell, didn't make scenes, didn't beg. He simply distanced himself. He started going out more, came home late, avoided long conversations. He began attending the gym, renewing his wardrobe, taking better care of his appearance. Sarah interpreted these changes as a natural emotional reaction. She imagined he was trying to process the situation, perhaps even competing with Ryan in some way. She maintained her meetings with her lover, feeling emancipated, in control of her own choices. The children noticed the tension but attributed it to work stress. Sarah made an effort to maintain appearances. At home, prepared dinners, asked about Michael's day, tried to show that nothing had fundamentally changed. But it had changed. Michael began mentioning a new secretary he had hired, Isabella, recently graduated, extremely competent. Sarah didn't pay much attention. She was too busy living her own adventure to notice the signs. Ryan continued to be everything she thought she needed. He constantly complimented her, said she was beautiful, special, different from all the others. In his arms, Sarah forgot about the gray hairs that were starting to appear, the wrinkles around her eyes, the body that was no longer what it was in her youth. Ryan made her feel desirable, and that was intoxicating. But there were moments, late at night, when she looked at Michael sleeping beside her, when he still slept at home, and a pang of something she could unname pierced her chest. It wasn't regret, she told herself. It was just the natural discomfort of being in unfamiliar territory. It was on a Wednesday afternoon, 3 months after her confession, that Sarah decided to surprise Michael. She had noticed he seemed especially tired, and thought about taking him to dinner, maybe reconnecting a bit. She drove to his office without warning, a bouquet of flowers on the passenger seat. The receptionist was on her break, so Sarah went directly up to Michael's office. The door was ajar, and what she saw through the crack made her world collapse. Michael was embracing Isabella, the new secretary. It wasn't a professional embrace. It was intimate, loaded with a familiarity that made Sarah's stomach turn. When he kissed her, it was as if someone had pulled the floor out from under her feet. Sarah pushed the door so hard it slammed against the wall. Michael and Isabella separated immediately, but there was no denying what she had seen. "How dare you?" The words came out in a mixture of scream and cry. "How dare you do this to me?" The irony of the situation wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Isabella, embarrassed, mumbled an apology, and quickly left. Michael remained standing, with a calmness that was even more disturbing than any emotional reaction. "You're kidding me, Sarah." His voice was ice. "You, who for months have been meeting with another man, who imposed an open relationship on me that I made clear I didn't accept, have the audacity to come here and confront me. But I told you. I was honest with you. This is different. You're lying, hiding, and does that make a difference?" Michael asked, finally allowing anger to show through. "You think your honesty made it less painful, made it more acceptable? You destroyed our marriage, Sarah. You simply decided that your needs were more important than our vows, our history, our family. But I didn't want to end the marriage. I just ... double quotes. You just wanted to have everything," he completed bitterly, "the reliable husband, the structured family, and the young lover to make you feel special. Well, here's the truth. I couldn't look at you the same way anymore. I couldn't see our life together without seeing betrayal, without seeing disrespect. And yes, I met someone who looks at me like I matter. Michael, please ... Sarah felt tears rolling down. "We can talk. We can work this out. I'll end it with Ryan. We'll do couples therapy. We single quotes LL ... No, the word fell like a final sentence. "I want a divorce, Sarah. There's nothing left to save here." In the days that followed, Sarah tried everything. She called Ryan and ended the relationship he accepted with an ease that hurt more than she expected, making it clear he had never promised commitment or a future. She begged Michael to reconsider, to at least try for the family's sake. She proposed therapy, trips, a fresh start, but Michael was decided. There was a firmness in his eyes she had never seen before. He hired a lawyer and moved into an apartment. He was civil in dividing assets. She kept the house. He took part of the investments. The company remained his. The children, Emma and Tyler, were shocked. Emma, at 17, was especially harsh with her mother when she learned the reasons for the separation. "How could you do this to us, to Dad?" she yelled, locking herself in her room for days. Tyler, younger, was confused and hurt. He had always idealized his father, and seeing the family fall apart left him lost. Both chose to spend more time with Michael when they could. Friends and family began to distance themselves. Some judged openly. Others, out of loyalty to Michael or discomfort with the situation, simply disappeared. Sarah found herself increasingly isolated. The house, once full of life and movement, became a mausoleum of memories. Each room echoed with memories of a life that no longer existed. The bedroom where the children played when they were small, the kitchen where they had family dinners, the living room where they watched movies on Friday nights. It was on one of those lonely nights that Sarah decided to reach out to her friends, Jennifer, Rebecca, and Patricia, the women who had planted the seed of the idea that destroyed her life. She needed to understand, needed to know if it had been worth it for them, if there was any hope that it made sense. She managed to gather the three for coffee at the same place where it all began. But the atmosphere was completely different. The laughter had vanished, replaced by awkward silences. "Were you right?" Sarah asked bluntly. "Are you happy? Did your marriages really improve?" The silence that followed was the most eloquent answer. Jennifer was the first to speak, her eyes red. "I'm getting divorced, Sarah. My husband found out about the affair. It was ... horrible. The kids don't talk to me anymore." Rebecca nervously stirred her coffee cup. "Paul cheated on me. I found out he's had a steady mistress for 2 years. When I confronted him, he said if I could, he could too. We're living like strangers in the same house." Patricia, always the most reserved, had tears silently streaming down. "I never had the courage to tell you all, but my young lover was all a lie. I made it up to feel part of the group. Actually, my husband has been indifferent to me for years. We're just two strangers sharing bills." Sarah felt as if the floor had been pulled from under her feet for the second time. "You lied. All that about feeling renewed, about marriages improving, about freedom and empowerment. We were trying to convince ourselves," Jennifer admitted, "trying to make it seem right, justify our choices. But the truth, we were all running from real problems in our marriages, running from the fear of aging, running from dissatisfaction, and instead of facing it, of really trying to fix things, we destroyed everything." "Why didn't you tell me the truth when I came back to talk to you?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking. "Because it's easier to maintain the lie than admit we ruined our own lives," Rebecca answered simply. "It's easier to keep pretending it was an empowered choice than recognize it was just ... self-destruction." Sarah left that meeting with an even heavier weight on her chest. The women she admired, who she believed had found an answer, were just as lost as she was, maybe more. The months that followed were a painful process of acceptance. Michael moved on with his life, the relationship with Isabella became official, and the children, gradually, accepted the new reality. They were young, kind to each other, and that hurt Sarah more than she admitted. Ryan never contacted her again. She discovered by chance, through social media, that he was in a serious relationship with a woman his own age. Everything he had said about her being special, different, had been nothing but empty words said to a vulnerable woman seeking validation. Sarah started therapy. Finally, she needed to understand what had led her to make those choices, to destroy a life that, despite being imperfect, had value. "What were you really looking for?" her therapist asked in one session. The answer came in tears. "I wanted to feel alive. I wanted to feel I was still desirable, that I still had value beyond being a wife and mother. I had lost myself in 25 years of taking care of everyone but myself. And do you think the way you tried to find yourself was healthy?" "No," Sarah admitted. "I was hungry and, instead of preparing a nutritious meal, I swallowed poison because it tasted sweet. I thought seeking validation in another man's arms would solve a problem that was mine, internal. I thought infidelity was freedom, when actually it was just a cowardly way to avoid the real work of fixing what was broken." The therapist nodded. "And what did you lose in this process?" "Everything." The word came out in a whisper. "I lost my husband, my children's trust, my friendships, my reputation. I lost the life I built over a quarter of a century. And the saddest part, I had problems in my marriage. Yes, Michael and I had settled, lost connection, but those were problems that could be solved. With communication, with effort, with couples therapy. Instead, I chose to dynamite everything." 2 years passed since that fateful afternoon in Michael's office. Sarah still lived in the same house, but it seemed bigger, emptier. The children visited occasionally, but the relationship never returned to what it was. There was a respectful coldness, but the intimacy had been lost. Michael remarried. Sarah saw the photos on social media Emma had posted, radiant beside her father and stepmother. The pain was acute, but she had no right to complain. She had made her choices. On lonely nights, Sarah reflected on how everything could have been different if, instead of seeking external validation, she had been honest with Michael about her feelings of invisibility. If they had sought couples therapy together, if she had invested in herself in healthy ways, resuming hobbies, making new friends, seeking personal fulfillment without destroying her family. She thought about her friend's words that Thursday afternoon, so long ago, about how every woman after 40 needed a pressure valve, and she realized now how that discourse was poisonous, masked as empowerment. There was nothing liberating about destroying vows, betraying trust, hurting people who loved her. True freedom, she finally understood, didn't come from impulsive acts of rebellion or seeking passion outside an imperfect marriage. It came from courage. Courage to have difficult conversations, to face real problems, to do the hard work of keeping a relationship alive and healthy over the years. Sarah had sought to feel young again, desirable, alive. And for a few months, in Ryan's arms, she had experienced that illusion. But when the smoke cleared, what remained? Not youth, not lasting passion, not liberation, only loneliness, regret, and the painful awareness that she had traded something solid and real for a temporary fantasy. She looked at old family photos, genuine smiles frozen in time, and wondered if she would ever be able to forgive herself. Michael had moved on. The children were building their own lives. Her friends had dispersed, each dealing with the consequences of their own choices. And Sarah was learning to live with the price of the freedom she thought she wanted. A price too high, paid with currency that could never be recovered. 25 years of history, a family's trust, and the chance to fix something that was broken, but not irreparably destroyed. In the quietness of the house that was once a home, Sarah finally understood the cruelest lesson. Some choices cannot be undone, and some doors, once closed, never open again.